Welcome back, guys, to another Dumpster Talk podcast here at Sod Metal Recycling. Today we have a very special guest here with us. We just walked him around the yard, showed him some things. First time being here.
Yeah.
So we have Senator Scott Martin. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, it's great to be here, and thank you for the tour. Amazing facility. You never know the good work that's being done back here, just off the road. Important work, and it was really cool to see it.
Yeah, we appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule to come out here and check us out.
No, absolutely. Well, listen, when you have guys that are connected to Catholic High reach out to you and say, come do something. Yeah, Crusader family, you got to come do it.
Yep, close-knit for sure.
We appreciate that. I definitely, Todd and I were talking with you about it, just like the close-knit of Catholic and also Columbia, as you know, is very well like that too. And this business that we've been working in, like the start of our career, it's kind of all been like that, like close-knit familyness. So
Not to be too much of a commercial for it, but it was an amazing experience with Lancaster Catholic, and one of the best things is meeting folks from all over the county that going up through school, and very grateful for that. My parents gave me that.
You keep those connections too.
Absolutely.
Like we were just up at the Penn State Oregon game this weekend.
Yeah.
And we ran into 2 or 3 of our buddies from Catholic that we haven't seen since senior year.
Oh, that's amazing.
So like it's just crazy how 5 years you haven't seen them and still like nothing ever changed.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's you always seem to run into those scenarios, whether it's in business or if you're out casually. You just never lose that connection, and it's pretty cool.
Yeah. Absolutely.
It's definitely great. Well, did you want to give us maybe just a little bit of a background on yourself, kind of share maybe some parts of your journey you think are important? What got you here today?
Yeah, I'm the oldest of 7, and what got us to Lancaster County was my family was originally from Philadelphia, and my dad was in the Navy, and on a Friday night he was on leave. He met my mom at Villanova at a party. By Sunday, they were engaged.
Oh my God!
Wow.
And so I was the only one that wasn't born in Lancaster County. I was a Navy brat when he was still stationed, but he took his first police job here in Lancaster County. And that's how we got here back in the early 70s. And there's 4 boys, 3 girls. We all went to Lancaster Catholic. I graduated in 1990. I believe the last one, Kelly, graduated in 2002. Went on to Millersville University, where I played football and wrestled there. Studied sociology and criminal justice, and really thought that was going to be my life. I thought I was either going to follow my dad's path. There was part of me that really wanted to work with kids and thought I would end up coaching. But in the meantime, I had an opportunity to play some football after college. Was a free agent signee with the New York Giants in '94.
Good Giants.
Yeah, I'm a Giants fan here. Sorry about Saquon, by the way. Good.
Tough subject.
Yes, but I after college got to play a couple years in the Arena Football League, and in the off season I'd come back and work in juvenile corrections at the old Barnes Hall Juvenile Detention Center. It's now the Lancaster County Youth Intervention Center. And I thought that was going to be, especially after I had an injury with back surgery, and was like, you know what, it's time to get a real job and go full time there. I thought I was going to do that and just coach kids. Like that was really going to be my future. And weirdly enough, going from being a guy that, my most important thing every morning was ripping the sports section out of the newspaper to read it with my coffee, was, you start paying attention to things that impact your life, impact your industry, the job that you do. And we had county commissioners at the time that were pretty controversial. There were grand jury indictments for selling the nursing home behind closed doors. It was just really crazy stuff. And never been involved in politics, really had no interest in it. And I remember complaining about it. And someone once said to me, well, listen, instead of complaining about it, why don't you do something about it? And that really kind of stuck me, stayed with me. And of course, Barnes Hall was one of the Lancaster County government departments. So I ended up running against my bosses. And I had to resign my job in order to do it, and took that risk. But I believed in it. Here we are, flash forward, with 8 years as being a Lancaster County commissioner and trying to right that ship, and then getting convinced to run for the state Senate. I never thought I'd be in it, but, I think in my life, there's a couple things that really drive me. One is I will always be someone that says I learned many, many valuable lessons in life on a football field or a wrestling mat that I hold up just as importantly as the things I learned in a classroom. all the intangibles, your work ethic, the preparation, the teamwork. And even more importantly, in the world that I'm in now is in sports, you set a goal and you do all these things to achieve it. And the way I look, and the reason I think my team has been pretty successful, whether with the county or with the state, is that we had goals and we worked as hard as we can to achieve those goals. You got to strategize. You got to build partnerships to get legislation across the goal line. We did I wrote the constitutional amendment back to kind of constrain governor powers during COVID, which the voters approved. Like, you think about all these different things you work on. There's so many things related to my upbringing, my sports experience, and that the day you lose that fire to do this or look at it that way, then you're just coasting, right? And it's time to pass the torch, because the big love for me is this county and this area, my district. Even though I represent basically the southern half of Lancaster County and part of the eastern and up into Berks now a little bit, I still look like I'm a Lancaster County senator, right? And we want to make sure that our home and our state is positioned the best it can be for economic growth, to grow, great place to raise a family, and hopefully future generations of those families want to stay here. And that's a lot of the challenges we're faced with now.
For sure. Thank you for sharing that. Is there a specific thing that kind of first drew you to becoming the state senator? Obviously, your love and passion for our community, but is there a certain thing that you would say kind of pushed you towards that?
Well, I think first and foremost, when I think I had a total of 21 years in county government, and being a commissioner, on whether it was the political side of things or the administrative side of things officially, you start to see all the intertwining between the states and the federal government and the counties, and they make you do certain things like, oh, here's this money, but here's all these hooks and strings. You see things. I think one of my last years as a commissioner was a budget that went all the way till December of that year, which, we had to front a lot of money, and it was really a difficult time for us to get through that. So for me, it was not a hard decision saying I can make a bigger impact in this fashion. It certainly has had its moments. I mean, as we talked, and I know you both said that you were both in that class of 2020, which, sadly, a lot of the things that you guys are faced with, the graduations, the proms, all those things, and how it's changed the world in a lot of ways. Never experienced anything like that. But you know what? I think we were kind of designed for that. People were hurting on every aspect, business and health and nursing home, you name it. And kind of really energized me on why the importance of, why we fight for certain things. And of course, I have to say this because my amazing wife, Amber, just earned her doctorate, by the way. Last week defended her dissertation. She is such a driving source of inspiration for me. I don't know how she does it. She's an elected county treasurer, but that's really not her full-time job. Her full-time job is wife, mother, running our family business, which we have one of the largest HOA and property management companies in central PA. And sometimes I think politics are bad. Sometimes HOA boards the politics of HOA boards can be even worse. And of course, my 4 teenagers. It's definitely an eye opener for me when I see the challenges that when you say, I don't want my kids to be faced with this, or I want them to be able to afford a home in Pennsylvania and stay here, or I want them to be able to get a family sustaining job and not be swallowed up with debt. Like, I see things often through my kids' eyes. And I think, especially as a society, that one of your most noble things is to pass the torch to the next generation and leave it better than it was when you got it. It's great to see it through your kids, because we all want the best for our kids. So we want the best for everybody's kids in the future. So that to me is a real driving thing, and why I appreciate the role in the state Senate is you can really have. I'm one of 50, right? I'm in leadership now. I chair the appropriations committee, so I have a lot of say in terms of negotiating the budget and what are the priorities that things that get funded. And so these are things that all drive me.
Yeah, no, it's cool having like a guy like you kind of fighting for us, because like at a certain event, I think it was at some event in Lancaster, but you were talking about the housing market and how you're worried about your kids maybe not being able to afford a house. And we're kind of in that same boat. So it's cool to have like, because we can only help with what we can change ourselves, but having someone kind of fighting for us for the same things we're fighting for is really cool.
Well, and not only for what it means to an individual, those things, but as a society, and I'm not saying this is a personal slight to people, but there's people out there that would preserve every ounce of land that we have left. And here we are, the national leader in agricultural farmland preservation in the country. Certainly did our part, but I would say where we've really struggled was on the part of the plan that said we're going to have more housing stock in certain areas, controlled growth, but we're going to build it. The problem is way too many people also, even inside those growth areas, want to prevent new housing stock from being added into the equation. And now we wonder why our land prices here, I think on average, our land prices are 5 to 7 times more per acre than the rest of central Pennsylvania. Listen, some people will flat out look at you and say, what about affordable housing? Who cares about that? I've had people literally say about that. Well, I know a lot of young people, I know other families that really care about that. And quite frankly, if we're going to be a county that says we're okay that our children and grandchildren, it's nice seeing you, adios, go live somewhere else.
Yeah.
And it's also not good for future workforce needs. One of the frustrating things, I share this story is, back in my last 2 years as commissioner, we fought hard to bring Urban Outfitters out to the Gap. Everyone was on board with that, having a business come in that was paying, eventually going to be paying taxes with the LERTA program that they're having. But a lot of people don't realize there was a secondary component of those plans, and that was to build workforce housing out there. And of course, that part got nixed at the time. Yeah. And so that can be that can be frustrating. But this is a story, we should feel blessed that we live in an area with such a diverse economy. And of course, Lancaster was the standard bearer of growth for decades in Pennsylvania. Meanwhile, you have places in Pennsylvania that every time there's a census, it literally 10% drop in population, 10% drop in population, 10% drop, and their economies are shrinking. You have a lot of migration away from certain parts of the state towards like the collar counties around Philly or our area. And that's had a real negative impact. Our fastest growing age demographic in Pennsylvania is 80 and above, right? Meanwhile, we just had the smallest kindergarten class statewide enrollment since 1986. That's our future workforce. That's our future tax base. And your growing segment is the one that, remember, we're one of 2 states that doesn't tax retirement income, but they're also our most expensive in terms of long-term care, things like that. So it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out that equation doesn't really add up. Yeah. And so a lot of the stuff that we're focused on and needs to happen in PA has to be centered around growth, attracting growth, whether it's from a business perspective, but probably most importantly, we got to get more of our young people not only to stay in PA, but we also got to capture and recruit from other states to keep them here as well. And that's been a big wrestling match up at the Capitol.
Yeah.
I know if it'll pop up like on like an Instagram post or different stuff like that, where it'll show like a list, top 5 places in the U.S. to retire, and it'll be like Lancaster, York, other places like that. And I guess we see that as like, wow, that's a cool thing. That's where we're from. But I guess there's challenges along with that.
No, you're exactly right. There's another edge of that sword.
Yeah.
And so as we get deeper and deeper into baby boomers retiring and things, we're seeing this glut of job openings in critical places. And if, an entity can't find workers, they won't choose to move here and invest, or the ones that are here will pick up and go to places. They have to find it. But we are working on things that are trying to address that and turn that tide around.
Yeah, I found especially like my older cousin moved down to Virginia, and all through his childhood, he always talked about how he wanted to move away from here. Mm-hmm. And it took about 2 months for it to really sink in of like how great of a place Lancaster County is.
Oh yeah.
Which I think that's awesome. I've never left Columbia. I've obviously loved Lancaster County. So I definitely hope that more people come here and that kind of the economy continues to grow.
the history here, the natural beauty.
Such a beautiful place.
It really is. But we got to do the things, whether it's from a government policy perspective, that encourages people to do it. You know, you can't be a state. I think now it's getting better because we're working on this. You know, we had the second largest corporate net income tax in the entire country. They were wondering why people aren't choosing here. We have been known to have some of the most onerous regulations and permitting hurdles to overcome in order to get a business started. You know, so we've been working on these things, putting in permitting reform. We're trying to phase down the corporate net income tax from where it was at 9.99% down to a more competitive 4.9%. We finally got our foot in the door with the net operating loss carry forward. We're one of the only states. It's basically the business penalty, startup penalty, it was known as. But most importantly, and I'm really proud of this one because it goes into what we were just talking about. Last year, we had a big battle over higher education. You know, the governor thought part of the problems to solving this was, we're going to merge the state system schools with community colleges. Well, bigger lumbering government wasn't going to solve the problem. So what we did was we authored a plan called Grow PA. And Grow PA, there's two components of it, was to say, we're going to talk with the people who are actually job creators and say, what are your high demand needs? Where are we having problems filling stuff? And we're going to financially incentivize young people by saying, we're going to give you $5,000 a year, whether it's a 2-year school, whether it's job accreditation, whether it's a 4-year school. And if you get into that high demand major, we'll give you the $5,000 a year in exchange for, and you'll never have to pay it back if you agree to live in Pennsylvania and work in that high demand field for 12 months for every year you take that grant. And when you know it, it opened up the application period in last March. We had over 6,000 young people sign up, and now it's over 11,000 that want to commit to staying here. It also makes us better investors of taxpayer money because it requires us every year. We've had a good run on, you know, our shortage in nurses, or our shortages in math and science teachers, our shortage in the trades, or pretty much everything in the criminal justice system, from cop to corrections officers. There's huge shortages. If you have a good run on that, then you start focusing on and shift those resources around. That makes us a better investor. Kids are graduating with less debt. You know, selfishly, and I've said this earlier to you guys, my hope is that in that period of time that they are mandated to stay here as the part of their contract with us, that they fall in love, get married, plant their roots here, get a mortgage here, and really try to stem that tide. That's the in-state piece. The out-of-state piece is we are the second largest importer of out-of-state students in the entire country. We have tons of colleges. We're oversubscribed, quite frankly. Problem is under our old model, we would give all this money to brick and mortar colleges under the guise of keeping tuition low. These kids are coming from other states. They're benefiting from getting an education there, and then they're turning around and going back to their home states. There's not an ROI for Pennsylvania taxpayers in that scenario, certainly not in keeping our demographics. So what we're doing is, and a lot of states are doing this to us, they're offering our kids these out-of-state merit scholarships, and, you know, hey, come to the University of Alabama. Hey, you're going to watch some good football there, you know, like, and then the problem is our kids are staying there. And so what we're trying to do is find ways. We had about 75 sign up for that they can come here at in-state tuition rates if they agree. Every year you take it in that high demand field, just like the other part of the program. And we're trying to find ways into the information pipelines around the country and other states to get more kids to choose and to stay in Pennsylvania. So a lot of work on that. We're proud of it. It started off as a $25 million program. And that was for what we thought would be 5,000 kids. And of course, we're up to 11,000. It's really important that we keep this program, the resources behind it, because it matters keeping these kids here.
Yeah. What do you think the biggest reason is that they're leaving? Whether it's like the jobs they're looking for isn't here, or like a lot of our friends are moving just because of the weather, like simple things like that. Like, how do you like kind of combat that? Like, some of our friends are going to school in Florida. Yeah, love the weather. Like,
well, COVID didn't help either, because it was a totally different world in Florida during COVID. Yeah, you know, we were one of the most lockdown states, and I think we're the only state in the country that said real estate wasn't essential. And literally I could walk across the border into Maryland and go see a house, like it was just crazy. And I think that carried a lot of people too. But, I think that we need, just as much as Florida does a good job of touting its sunshine, we need to do a good job of touting all the things we mentioned earlier about this state, the absolute critical history to this country's formation, the natural beauty of this. There is nothing prettier than driving through parts of Pennsylvania in the fall and the leaves changing. And of course, we get all 4 seasons here.
Yeah.
And how do you tout that? But probably the biggest 2 things I would say matter. Do you have family sustaining jobs available and the affordability of living here? If you don't have those 2 things, or if you don't have an onerous government that the overall tax burden, Pennsylvania is a very unique kind of monster with, state, county, and all these municipalities too. You're getting taxed from every different angle. How do you do it in a way that is not putting an onerous burden that drives people away from your state? And it's a part of the equation.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you for sharing that. Could you kind of go through, I know you shared a little bit of it, but your current roles, because I know you have multiple, and kind of just what your day-to-day looks like? I know every day is different, I'm sure.
So, I mean, I always say my current roles, obviously the most important are husband and dad. But in the Senate, my colleagues in the Senate Republican caucus elected me to be in their leadership team as the chair of the Senate Appropriations Committee. So every bill that comes through that building has to go through my committee. We do all the financial analysis because it's important to know, this great idea you have, how much is it going to cost, right? Or this other idea, how much will it potentially save? I'd like to see more of those kind of ideas happen with government. I also wear other hats there as well, too. I am the chair of the Pennsylvania Athletic Oversight Committee, so the PIAA, and a lot of their sports-related things, they have to come to us and give reports, and we bring up various issues from around the state. So you can imagine people are pretty passionate about that. I serve on the Banking and Insurance Committee. I serve on the Environmental Resources and Energy Committee. Energy is a huge topic that we do need to do better with in Pennsylvania. A lot of scary things on the horizon if we don't get that right. I also am one of the 2 senators appointed to the Chesapeake Bay Commission, which has been great, and done a lot of work with clean water. And Pennsylvania is really doing a good job right now. We've made some good investments in that. I think we're doing better than a lot of our counterparts in other states. So those are some of the hats that I wear professionally. Obviously, as I mentioned before, we do have a family business. There was a point in time I could never be a head coach because I still have that passion I always love working with kids, and for about 10 years, coached youth wrestling and youth football, with the understanding is when I could be there, I could be there. That's why I could never really be a head coach, because the schedule up there in Harrisburg can be kind of crazy. But, then you have the political side, and the political side is myself, our majority leader, Joe Pittman from Indiana County, and our president pro tem, Kim Ward, who's from Westmoreland County. We spent a lot of time traveling the state, to help other members. So it's not just talking about policy stuff, but we also go around and do a lot of fundraising, because every 2 years, half the Senate is up. I'm always up in a presidential cycle. The other half's always up in the gubernatorial cycle. And so, we have to make sure that the folks that we have, whether we're recruiting good candidates, which I hear you'd be a great political candidate, by the way, if you want to tell your mom I said
my
that.
mom's going to go nuts.
All right. If I get a call from her, I'll know. But that's the other part of the equation, because you're reactive to the people. In elections, every 2 years, there's a new layout of chess pieces on the board, and they matter. I will say this, and I won't put it politically, but I'll just say, my committee, I told you every single bill's got to come through my committee. My committee is also a graveyard of a lot of very bad ideas that can make this state look even much different or take us in a different direction. And so playing defense to that stuff is important. And right now it's, you got a House Democratic majority. You got a Democratic governor, and that's a big election next year. How that pans out through 2026, not to skip over to the importance of 25 and all the Supreme Court races and all that, that's very important. But it really will make a telling difference as to, at this fork in the road, is Pennsylvania going to be competitive and focused on pro-growth policies and keeping our young people here? Or is Pennsylvania going to be, go down the path where it's spending beyond its means, expanding the entitlement state and a lot of government programs, and big budget deficits? That's, to me, is a fork in the road that people really have to. So getting that message out to people, and that's not a political statement, because quite frankly, that's the reality of the position. I'm a math is math guy. There's not a Republican version or a Democratic version of, hey, we're spending, we get $47 billion of revenue that come in the door, but we have people who want to spend $52 billion. That's a reality.
One's doing it and one. Yeah.
One wants to do it and one's fighting not to do it. And that's kind of where the crux of why we're at this stalemate right now too.
Yeah, does it get frustrating to you sometimes? I'm sure that's a stupid question, but as a young person who doesn't know much about politics, I would just wish to see some sort of common ground sometimes. I feel like there's we're all people at the end of the day, and I feel like it's just can get very crazy.
Well, yeah, and certainly the last few weeks have been really devastating in the ability when you see someone assassinated who was engaged in wanting to go to college campuses just to debate, to have discussion, and do it respectfully. It's the core of one of our the top planks in our Constitution is our freedom of speech. I get worried in politics. You meet some of the best people in your life, and you meet some of the absolute worst. And I have no problem saying that. Some people who have never had a real job in their life, and they don't make decisions not necessarily for what's right, but really what's in their best, sustaining them in that position. Which way is the wind blowing? I get worried that when we get to the point where people say just because an idea comes from a certain side, it's automatically bad, because it undermines, whether it's on the federal level in the Congress, the Senate, and in the House of Representatives, or in the states with the Senate and House of Representatives. The whole design is not, someone can't come in and just steamroll everybody, right? The whole design is you have, like in my case in the Senate, you have 50 different voices. And, you got to get 26 votes to pass in the Senate. You got to get 102 to vote to pass in the House. And then you have a governor that has to sign it. And it seems now that everyone comes through it saying that it's not a consensus thing. It's like my way or the highway thing. And in reality, it doesn't work. It undermines completely our system of governance. And if we can't have the fundamental ability to communicate with each other, and it used to be that way. It used to be, from all the stories I've heard of a lot of the old timers, they'd have a good old fashioned debate on the floor, but then they were going and having dinner together. And, how's the family doing? And now it's almost like
that's what's missing. It's
what's missing. It's like you're either with us or against us, and it's very anti-American in my mind. It's what's kind of set apart this country was the ability not only to empower the citizens, but to do things with words and debate and not with bullets.
Yeah.
And that can be very frightening. And listen, if they ever have my kids call me, and I'll never forget where I was a couple days ago or a couple weeks ago when that occurred out in Utah, to have your own kids calling you upset, saying, "Dad, I don't want you to do any more public appearances." Yeah, it rattles you, and that's not the way. That's not the America that was promised to us or that has been. And we always have to make sure that we're fighting that those principles of what make this constitutional republic work is debate and dialogue.
Yeah,
has to be that way.
Yeah, that's what I feel for myself, and it doesn't really matter what you think, honestly. But to me, it just seems that if right versus left is something that people get that upset over and do something like that, it's like we're definitely off from where we're supposed to be here.
That was the saddest thing. We were here when it happened. That was the saddest thing I think I've seen.
It can make you want to just be like, I'm just done. I don't even, whatever.
Just chalk it up.
Yeah.
But it's terrible. Especially the whole point of kind of what he did was to have those uncomfortable conversations
Yeah.
because when those stop is when bad things start to
And that was
happen.
one of his famous quotes.
Yeah, and you don't have to agree or love what everyone says.
No.
But at the end of the day, you're people.
Yeah.
I mean, two kids.
Or
a
not
wife.
robots.
Yeah.
Right? We all can vary on different things, and some in some way that's been conflated with because you think a certain way, I'm not allowed to like you, or I'm not allowed to work with you. What we need, and I think is going to be a real calling card for the younger generation right now, is carry the torch of reasonableness and dialogue and debate. And it's okay to say, that's not acceptable, or that's not right. You guys need to get in a room and talk it out, or you need to have a debate on it. But if we lose that ability, and this turns, if we don't speak up, and it becomes more and more acceptable that bullets are the solution, that's why you've seen most countries in the course of history unwind.
Yeah.
And that's going to be the true test for us as a society.
Yeah, it's a very sad. I think that situation, I hope, is going to be a huge wake-up call to specifically our generation, because no matter what anyone does, no one deserves that.
No. In front of his wife and kids as well.
And I do think I really truly think most people our age, at least that we talk to, and obviously there's so many people, so you never know, but it seems most people are in agreement that, like, yeah, that shouldn't
never happen.
Shouldn't be a thing. So,
No,
like,
and it certainly should never be celebrated either.
yeah. It's just crazy.
And that to me was just as alarming was the things that were said online.
Yeah.
Like, how do you cheer on? You don't wish that on anybody.
Yeah.
And it's heartbreaking. And again, we live in a world where all our children are watching this too.
It's right in the palm of our hands.
It's in the palm of their hands.
Right away.
And I tell you right now, it's a video I wish I never saw. One of the first ones I saw was a close up of that, and I wish I could unsee it. Yeah. And sadly, the first thing I thought about was, holy cow, my kids saw this too.
Yep.
I saw you had a LinkedIn post about it, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
Which was really nice. That was just a terrible, terrible thing.
He was such, we got to spend, I think it was in 22 or 23. I'm sorry, I can't remember. He was here to raise money for, I think, Dayspring. And he was at a dinner, and we got to sit with him at the dinner and just watched him interact. He's just incredibly smart young man. Whether on U.S. history, whether it was on science, whether it was about biblical stuff. I mean, he could pull things from all over. But the thing that really stood out to me was his commitment. What really, he wanted dialogue. That was his whole point of doing what he did on college campuses, which sadly have become known as a place where not to have free speech and opposing sides debating. I mean, we just had the head of what's known as the biggest debate area. I think it's the Oxford Union, the society where they go and debate. And he had been there and debated, where the incoming president was like, Charlie Kirk just got shot. Let's go. Like, it's maddening. I see in different places in the world. I just watched the thing yesterday where a judge in the UK was chastising before he sentenced a man for 2 years in prison for what he posted on Facebook. And really what he was doing was just sharing his views on something, but it was considered to be hate speech. Like, it's a dangerous place, but it's going to take good people with sound minds to push back and make sure we're going to have a society that we deem to be appropriate for our kids to be handed. And that's a calling for all of us.
No, yeah, I appreciate you sharing that. I like, a lot of people thought of him kind of as like could be a future president. Like, out of anyone our age, he was probably 10 years older than us. But
Yeah.
I mean, he was a very smart guy for his age.
Yeah, and he inspired generations of young people. I think since his death, there's been another 15,000 applications to start chapters of his Turning Point organization, and they're committed to continuing to have the dialogue on campuses with people. Yeah, and I think that's important.
It's sad that like a situation like this opens up a lot of people's eyes to him specifically. Like, he didn't finish college, which I didn't know prior to him passing. But just listening to him I've watched some videos after, and just listening like how hard he worked to start that company without going to college. And he kind of got crapped on for that, not going to college while he's debating college kids.
Yeah, he came from a really poor area of Chicago, grew up that way. His dream was to get into the United States Military Academy at West Point,
Yeah.
and it didn't work out. And you're right, he didn't have a college degree. You would never have guessed it.
No,
I mean,
it
this
was-
guy was debating professors and people from academia, and he took pride in learning. He took pride in communicating. But the other thing too, because I hear a lot of people say, "Oh, he hate speech. Oh, he was a." I watched him treat people he absolutely disagreed with absolute respect and caring and kindness, and that was his hallmark. And but really a dark day because it wasn't a politician getting assassinated. I'm not saying that's right. All right. This was an everyday citizen. This was not an elected official, and that's why this is really the first political assassination successful since I think Bobby Kennedy and Martin Luther King in 1968. Yeah, a dark day, but we need the better angels to win in our communities and societies.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, I think just for a lighter note, just like everything that you have kind of to, like we just talked about, your roles and kind of everything you're responsible for. Is that just kind of the few things you listed off? Like you said, energy. You talked a lot about the future of the future of people in Lancaster County, kind of trying to build that up. Is that kind of like there's so many things obviously that fall into your plate? Do you like choose? Do you get to kind of choose pick and choose which ones you're kind of gonna handle, or put more time
can.
towards? I guess.
So I mean, there's two different there's two different aspects of my job.
Yeah.
One is, and I have a district office in Strasburg. It's the constituent service part of it, and that's where people come in the door and they have a child with disabilities who are having issues navigating the Department of Human Services, or you have someone coming in, they're having issues with a local bridge, or whatever it might be. We deal with that, and that sometimes can be the root of what leads you to do legislative change. But we have a team of people to help folks navigate it, and through, like we mentioned, COVID earlier. I mean, we were getting hundreds of calls a day, people who were hurting. It could have been their unemployment could have been, hey, why is my business shut down, but my competitor is left open? Like, navigating that. But legislatively, obviously, that's the most important component of my job. That and the budget is your number one policy document. We've gotten about 40 bills signed into law since I've been there. This is my 9th year. Okay. We got the one constitutional amendment done, restraining governors' powers and making them more accountable during an emergency. But if you would look at the body of, I'll call it the body of work, it has ranged from, I think the first bill I ever got into law had to deal with disability issues related to parking, and it seems simple, but it was an offense if you come up to a disabled person's parking spot, and you have those striped lines next to it, which were meant to be to open up like the mechanical portion of the van to get the wheelchair. Well, it wasn't an offense. It wasn't clearly defined in law that if someone parked their car there, and we literally had people coming out of grocery stores in their wheelchair who couldn't get into their vehicles because someone parked there. Like, that was the first bill I ever done. We've done a lot of things related to kids. If people would really look at my body of work, it's things bettering children. I've been one of the big supporters of expanding school choice in Pennsylvania. And man, we've gotten that from being a $25 million program when it started, the EITC program, which a lot of our parochial, private and other institutions use to give families options. It's now $660 million, that tax credit. Wow. And it's something we push for hard. I've done a lot of work with kids related to pediatric cancer research. Done a lot of work with children related to rights of kids with Down syndrome. So there's been a litany of things I've looked at in my career on that. I authored the Clean Streams Law in Pennsylvania with Senator Yaw from up in the Lycoming area and Senator Laughlin from the Erie area. That was through a lot of my work on the Bay Commission, creating the Clean Streams Fund, and making resources available to remove nitrogens and phosphorus from the waters, especially here in Lancaster County, and what our role is in polluting the Bay. But, we took a really interesting strategy on that one because there was never a lot of success in the past. was we really said this is about clean water for Lancaster Countyans. This is about clean water for Pennsylvanians and our wildlife habitats and things like that. And we finally were able to get it across the goal line. And so, yeah, interesting. You know, we've also been very involved in sanctioning girls wrestling in Pennsylvania. It's sad because I think Pennsylvania is the epicenter of wrestling on many levels. And the fact that there were 32 other states that sanctioned it before we did was really frustrating to me. And so we fought real hard alongside those advocates to finally get it done. We worked on some cool projects like, you know, a lot of people don't know, but we've had the men's and women's Olympic teams and world teams come train here often. And we're trying our best to expand that. And it's me personally, I would love to have them here permanently, kind of like we did with the field hockey team years ago. There's talk of bringing the National Wrestling Hall of Fame here in partnership with Stillwater, Oklahoma. I mean, why not? A good amount of the people in it are from Pennsylvania to begin with. So, you know, those are the kind of the cool things. But, yeah, you see other things, you know, a lot of people don't see, you know, the Centerville Road Interchange project that got done. Boy, I fought for that thing back close to 20 years ago. That's how long it takes to get these things in. The Route 3222 widening. You know, it's a whole broad range of things that people bring to us and that we work on. So, and tomorrow it could be something else. Maybe it's about recycling. You never know.
And so the things are coming to you from, like, do you have, sorry, just one last part of this question. Do you have someone like underneath of you do you have people underneath of you that are getting all the things from the civilians, I guess, like they bring ideas, they bring their issues, and then it all comes up to your desk, and then that's kind of how you kind of decide what.
Listen, I'm only as good as the team around me. We get an unbelievable amount of contacts, and not just from Lancaster County, because now that I'm chair of the Appropriations Committee and negotiating the whole budget, pretty much every single entity that touches any part of the budget wants to come and talk to us. And there's not enough hours in the day to do that, so I have people that work with me on that. I try my best to take as many of those meetings and calls as I can, but there's no way I can do it all.
Only one person.
But they bring it. I have a chief of staff. I have someone who's in charge of leading our policy efforts and writing of legislation and making sure the legalese is right. I have budget analysts as part of the Appropriations Committee. Now, they're with me because I chair the Appropriations Committee. The day I don't have that hat anymore, they go to the next person. I have my constituent services people in the district, you know, that even though I may be in Harrisburg, and I say this because I see people, and it is one of the irritating parts of the job that I see the media says a lot, like, you know, that legislature, that Senate's they've only gone to work 50 some days in the year. Like, that's a common thing, right, to say that. Like, and I think in my head is when you are in session, that is the culmination of the work. It moves. Like, you're taking the votes, you're going through committee, you're doing votes on the floor, you're debating. All the work of helping people, meeting with people, writing legislation, all that happens outside of those days. Yet the media tries to convince the public. And it gets me up because it feeds into this whole thing of why are things going off the rails a little bit and how people communicate or how they view things. Well, look what they're being fed. They're being fed things like making it seem like we only go to work 50 some days a year. No, that's the 50 some voting days at the Capitol. Yeah. And I also like to remind people that they also like to judge, they've only passed X number of bills in a year. Well, I turn around and I want to say, well, how many did we kill? Because my job isn't just to pass legislation, just to pass legislation.
You have to get rid of the bad ones too.
Yeah, we have to do things that we also have to stop. Part of it's playing deep, right? Just like football. You have your effort on offense, but you also have an effort on defense, and it's just as important.
Yeah. I don't know. It's really great talking with you, and like we mentioned, also Brett Miller as well, because we can kind of see, like, just hear about politics and just like, you said, stuff you hear on media and just news and just the overall vibe. If you just hear people talk, it's like when we talk to you, you kind of realize that you guys are people that have families, have a hand in it, kind of, and just really want people to be able to thrive. Like, I think that's just the big thing about politics, really, is at least you guys I've met who are two great people in politics. It's really people. It's
well,
biggest component.
And I would say that, and it's important. That's the way we are. It should be.
Yeah.
I also like to say a lot of people think that getting into politics, that, you know, do I need a political science degree or should I be a lawyer? And, And I would say absolutely not. I think what makes the place special and run the best is when you have people that come from a variety of different experiences and backgrounds. Some of the most successful legislators that I've ever met, some were farmers who never had more than a high school diploma, but they got more done for agriculture in this state than anyone I can think of. Or there's an anti-drug advocate mom from the 80s, Katie True, that used to have the Brett Miller seat back in the day. Just an incredible leader. But yeah, your experience, like, yeah, anyone who goes up there and acts like they know everything about everything is usually the worst, and they don't get anything done.
Because you can't vouch for your people. Like, how are you going to vouch for just, like, person who just is all about themselves?
No, right. Yeah. And in theory is I think what makes someone successful up there is okay, I may come with a certain background, and I might get put on different committees because of the background I have, which is a good thing. But the most important quality trait is do you take the time to ask the right questions, go to the right people, and learn about those issues? And finding someone, if this is something related to scope of practice in nursing, well, it's good to talk to people in the medical community about that, right? And having those relationships, whether in your community or one of the many people who were legislators that used to be nurses at some part in their career. Like, if you can master that part, you're going to be a successful legislator. And for heaven's sake, don't act like you know everything about everything, because that's typically the ones that don't. Yeah. So, but I appreciate what you said about, I really believe in my heart. Listen, I could be home with my wife and my kids, and I do go home every night. I could stay there. I'm outside the radius where I'm at in southern Lancaster County, but I like being at home with my wife and kids at night and going to their game. That's my zen time,
Yeah.
Plus I have a honey-do list I got to do. So, but it really is about problems and solutions. And if you can identify with and connect with your community on what are their needs are, and try your hardest to make a difference in their lives, whether it's my kids, whether it's your kids, whether it's your extended family, whatever it be, it'll be a better place for it. And I just wish there were more people, and we need so many more people in this business. And I'm not just talking about Congress and Senate and, think about townships. Think about the role they play in people's lives. Who's picking up your trash and keeping your communities clean? Who's operating a police department and keeping your community safe? It's tough finding good people to run for a lot of these positions. Some of them are only part-time. Some of them are volunteer. And it's not just elected. I remember when I was a commissioner, hundreds of positions we would appoint, whether, the Waste Management Authority, the Convention Center Authority, the Drug and Alcohol Commission. It's sometimes like pulling teeth to get people to do it. So there's ways for people to give back without giving up their passion if they have another job. But we're just not seeing that kind of interest. Part of it, I think, is how politics is kind of held up and portrayed more in media than the actual role of governing and doing the work of governing. And I think that turns some people off, like, hey, why would I want to get involved in a business where they're going to be doing mailers, tearing my family apart? Or, I got to tell you a funny story. Years ago in 2020, I was up for re-election, and I was one of the targeted seats to try to flip the Senate. They spent like almost $3 million to try to defeat me in that race, and it was nonstop barrage. Most of the money was from California, Illinois, other places, funneling in to make out me as the bad guy. Every day there was a new mailer in a mailbox. Well, my son has an October birthday, Hayden. He's now a senior in high school. And he had a bunch of friends at his house, and I think it was a Sunday, if I recall. And the guys, they wanted to turn on the game, and he turned on the game, and the first thing that popped up is this ad, Scott Martin, evil SOB, and they're like, oh man, Dad, and he's looking at me like, and then he turned on YouTube, and the first thing on YouTube was a streaming commercial, Scott Martin, evil SOB. Like, it's, oh but Lord. People see that, and they're like, why would I want to be part of that? I think I've developed a thick enough skin. I think part of it's sports, to be honest with you. When you go into an opposing visitor's gym or playing field and you got people booing you or whatever it might be, I look at it as being like an away game.
You have to have some grit. You
got to have thick skin. If you don't have thick skin, and if you legitimately are okay or not okay with not making everybody happy, then this is the wrong business for you. Listen, part of my job is to be like, I disagree with you, and here's why. If you can't do those things, it's not. And unfortunately, there are people you try to make everybody a fan of yours, or make you're talking out both sides of your mouth too.
Yeah.
So
The thing with the media, I feel like it doesn't let you. What I've learned, I like to have my own opinion on people and things, but I feel like the media kind of doesn't allow that. Which because like a lot of the people that like you might debate with, some of the information they might have heard from the media or just like a friend telling them, half the time it's not even true.
yeah.
And it's like so like targeted toward one side. It's hard.
It can be frustrating because I've literally seen headlines that the action taken, the headline was the exact opposite of what the actual law said that was worked on, or the action taken. Listen, I'll always think there's definitely some good people there. It's good that people have the ability now more so. I know there's a lot of negativity that comes with the online world for our kids, and we're working on a lot of that right now on that issue. But the other side of that is people can also do a lot of their own research and look at different sources of information. Certainly, even with us, we put out a lot of our own stuff, and we put out, here's the bill, like here it is in writing, just so people can see that. Me personally, I try to not read as much social media. It's a rabbit hole for me. We use it to post stuff, but I don't want to get lost in that. But yeah, it's definitely an interesting world, and too much of politics and the sound bites on shows seem to outshine actually the importance of politics is supposed to be a vehicle to governing, right? To influence elections, to who your official people are. It should never outshine the importance of the work and the problems and solutions that are being worked on. And that does cause me concern seeing that direction that it goes on, because if it's about just Facebook or Insta likes, and it's not about the job you're actually doing, then we got a problem.
It's a problem. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I don't know if you have anything.
Yeah, I guess just one last question before we have a wrap up question that we always give our guests. But I guess if you could just give one thing that you would really like to see change, maybe in the next few years or whatever timeline you think, and that you're planning on working on. And then one thing that you think, I guess, like you said earlier, there's like some issues in the energy space. Like one thing you think people in Lancaster County need to look out for, I guess.
Sure. Well, I mean, first and foremost, one big thing we're working on right now is back in 2018, I authored a law related to school safety and security, and created the Safe to Say program in schools. It was meant to be a place that kids can anonymously report threats from their phone by calling a line or a telephone number. And what we discovered, though, it captured hundreds of thousands of tips. Kids are using it, and it stopped, and we were able to confiscate weapons from going into schools from kids who were making threats. It also, the biggest portion of people that are calling out there are kids doing an outreach for help. Something's going on. Some of them are having suicidal ideations, And for me, though, it was meant for accountability after the Parkland shootings down in Florida, where all these agencies were pointing fingers at each other like, oh, the FBI knew about this then, and the sheriff's department knew about then. We wanted a single point of entry, and once the attorney general's office gets it, the school district is immediately notified, and the local law enforcement jurisdiction. There's no pointing of fingers. You guys knew, right? That was a big part. But there's a huge part of it now that we realize, like, how do we connect kids who are obviously reaching out because they're hurting somehow, right? How do we connect them to some sort of services? And that's something I'm working on right now. For me, especially in my role now, if you're saying about a couple of the biggest things, is we have to keep positioning the state for growth. The Commonwealth of Pennsylvania has to be fiscally sound. We cannot be spending more than we're taking in. We need to have tax rates that are competitive to other states. And above all else, and probably one of the biggest issues facing this state is we have never embraced our role and potential role in the energy markets. Natural gas, we're in Marcellus Shale territory. We have been one of the largest electricity generators in the country. But now we're put in a position with a lot of baseload capacity, gas, coal, and nuclear that have been shut down, put in a place where we're going to have a deficit related to utilization, where the demands are going to exceed what we're producing. The governor, Prior Wolf, proposed putting us into the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative, which in essence, I think the value of that is a $1.3 billion carbon tax. And basically that carbon tax would be passed directly on the consumers. And when you talk about energy, when energy goes up, everything goes up. Hospital bills, educational bills, the cost of food production. I mean, you name it, everything. It's not just your home bill that you open up. We have this potential to be a leader. And before all these data processing centers became the new rage, and they're getting on, and certainly there's going to be investment even here in Lancaster County, that's going to accelerate that gap that we need to fill. It's not going to be filled by wind. It's not going to be filled by solar. And I'm not against that. If it works for entities to have that on their buildings to offset costs, but it never will generate what's needed that baseload does. And so, I'll give you an example. 3 Mile Island's going to be opening back up that Unit 2 reactor. People are like, oh, that's great. That used to power close to 1 million homes and businesses in the surrounding area. Well, guess what? It's being started up not to help that. It's being started up directly as a contract with Microsoft, right? And we have to get it right, because it's when energy grids fail, people die. It's a reality of it, whether they're on medical equipment, whether it happens during the freezing cold. The one 3 years ago in Texas on Valentine's Day, all those people who died in that scenario, we have to embrace it here in PA. It'll lower energy costs across the board. It'll make us more competitive, but for the love of God, it'll strengthen our grid and make us a global leader. So it's a positive for everybody. But again, this Governor Shapiro has appealed. We won it in court, saying that, and this might be shocking to you, but the Commonwealth Court said, governors can't unilaterally create and implement taxes, right? We won that. Well, he ended up appealing it. He ran on being against it. Then he ended up standing behind it in court. And so we've been encouraging him to withdraw his appeal to the Pennsylvania Supreme Court. It's given us so much uncertainty in our markets. It's caused many power plants to close. And when they close, not only does it hurt our grid, but usually there's hundreds of jobs that it's involved in, and the people who have trades there, they usually take their skills and go to Ohio, West Virginia, who are cleaning our clock in this area now. Just an incredibly important topic that here we sit. We're not in Marcellus Shale region, but it's critically important to all of us. You want to be a manufacturing leader? Well, guess what manufacturing is intensive with? Energy needs. Like, work with us here, people. Yeah. And I will always state, and we have reduced CO2 emissions in Pennsylvania by more than 25% over the last 25 years. We are kicking the you-know-what out of the rest of the states in the regional greenhouse gas, the RGGI program. And a lot of that's because natural gas converted that used to be coal-fired power plants. So there's a way to do it safely. There's a way to do it cleanly, but we need to do it. It's a bedrock of our society, is having this energy potential.
Absolutely. It's a scary topic. We always hear it at the events. State of the county, I know you usually speak at. It's always interesting hearing the updates on that. So Thank you for sharing that. Our final question, unless you have anything for us, we always ask our guests what advice you kind of wish you had starting off your career that you know now. We're both 23, so if there's any piece of advice that you know now that you wish you did, if you would like to share it.
So I would say this, because as I mentioned earlier, I never thought I'd end up in the kind of job I'm in now. Never prepared myself for it. Just be a person that has a passion for something, right? Do something that absolutely you love getting up to do every day, because ultimately that happiness and in that calling that you have extends itself into your family life, your friendship circles, and be open to the fact that what you might think is, oh, I have to do this, I have to do that. It may not end up being that. And many people be like, oh, you regret not being able to work with kids and coach like you were. I would counter, I've probably been able to be put in a position. God put me in a position where I was able to do a lot more to help kids, but from a perspective I never thought of before. And finally, I would say this, the things that are going on in our society, what our country means in the history of the world, the issues that we're trying to tackle, it matters. And it's easy. Like I said, I was the guy that pulled out the sports section and didn't really, everything else going on in the world, I really wasn't paying attention to. Pay attention to this stuff. It matters. And it matters because we need more people drawn to it to get into it. And it means more, even more so, is because we need to push back. There's a right way of doing things that made this country special. Not perfect, but it's the ability to keep striving for that more perfect union. And we need more people that are committed to that.
Yeah.
No, that's great advice for any age group to kind of hear. We appreciate that. And thank you again for taking the time to come on.
Oh, it's an honor to be on Dumpster Talk, and like I said, I as soon as I got that call, and I couldn't say no to the Catholic High connections, and keep up the great work, and would love to come back someday.
Of course, we'll definitely have you back. We appreciate you, and we'll catch you guys on the next episode.